Yo, what is up guys, it's Pedro here, and in today's video we'll be going over the Washington Commanders' top remaining needs after the first wave of free agency. If you guys are new, make sure to subscribe, do all that good stuff, and comment down below your top 3 needs for the Washington Commanders. I'm going to be going over top 3 and then some other kind of honorable mentions for the Washington Commanders. So the Commanders have gone through that first wave of free agency. Overall, I think they did a pretty good job. There's still some needs, but they got a little bit of time left in free agency. They got the draft to go through, so they still have time to, fix some of these holes. So we're going to talk about that in today's video. So let's go over the top 5 needs. So for me, you see this one on the screen. We'll get to that in a second, but the number 1 need for the Washington Commanders, in my opinion, is the edge rusher position. It's not like it's an awful room, but they don't have a stud. They don't even have, I would say, like a good player. You got Clelin Ferrell, depth piece. You got Dorrance Armstrong, an okay starter. You got Dietrich Wise, who I think is pretty solid, but he's usually a depth piece on most teams. Might be a starter for us. You got Javon Kinlaw, who I don't see as an edge, but might, situationally play on the edge for the Washington Commanders. And then you got Jacob Martin, depth piece, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, another depth piece, and Andre Jones, depth piece, might not make the roster. So for me, it's just not a very great group. It is a deep group, though. It is a deep group, which I like, so they have depth, but they're missing that stud. Whether that's a Trey Hendrickson, whether that's a guy in the draft that they want to get, maybe James Pierce from Tennessee, Green, I think from Bowling Green or Marshall, I forgot. But there's a lot of different guys that will be in that 20 to 33-ish, 35 range that the Washington Commanders could get at edge rusher to add to the group. The problem is, a lot of these edge rushers, especially drafted in the 20s, 30s, in year 1, they're not going to have an insane impact. So, maybe they'll get you 6-7 sacks, which is good, but you're still missing a stud from that group. So I would say maybe the Washington Commanders could wait for a stud edge rusher to be released, maybe because of cap space issues. Not even a stud, like a good edge rusher, a guy that's better than anyone they have in the room right now. But if they do draft a guy in the first round, I think they'll be fine. They just have to, one of these depth pieces have to step up. So Dorrance Armstrong, if we can get the same type of season he did last year, but like maybe a little bit better, that would be great. I think he had a solid season for the Commanders. Dietrich Wise, if he can step up into a, good starter or, an average starter, that would be good too. And then same thing with maybe, Jean-Baptiste, who, maybe he can play a little bit better than people think because, last year was his rookie year, had a couple nice plays, but just was injured and wasn't getting a lot of PT when he came back because of the injury and, did miss a decent amount of time, was on IR. So maybe he has a chance to step up, but I'd say, you got Dorrance Armstrong as your, best edge rusher right now. You draft a guy in the first round. In the second and third, I don't really see the point of doing that. I mean, yes, some studs do come out of the later rounds, middle to later rounds, but edge rusher is a position where a lot of the time you find your edge rushers in the first round or an early first round. Yes, there's exceptions of guys that are drafted past the first round like Trey Hendrickson and Max Crosby, and there's exceptions, obviously, of guys in the first round not working out to where you thought they would be. Chase Young. Like I made this point last video and someone was like, well, Chase Young was a bust. Yeah, there's exceptions, obviously. But usually you find your good edge rushers in the first round. So for me, it's either first round or bust. I don't see the need to take a guy in the second or third round. Unless it's like early second, you trade back a couple spots. That's fine. But yeah, we'll see what they do there with the edge rusher position. Trey Hendrickson is still available. I would definitely not give up a first for Trey Hendrickson. Second, still a little bit rich considering the Commanders, their draft capital right now. I would give up maybe a third round pick, and I know that's not going to get it done, but just that's what I would give up considering the draft capital the Commanders have, and you're going to have to pay him like $30 million plus a year. Let's talk about the next top need for the Commanders. I think there's two clear ones: edge and running back. Brian Robinson is good, is all right. Austin Eckler's a good, second, third back. Jerry McNichols is a good, rotational back. Same thing with Chris Rodriguez. But they're missing that dog. They're missing that stud. They don't have that right now. And this draft class is loaded with studs. So, and you also look, when you consider the needs, it's a little bit of, a mix of both things when you think about what you need right now and what you need in the future. So this one with the edge rusher and running back, I meant to say running back, but I guess edge rusher too, they need it now and they also need it for the future. Like there's some positions like, maybe linebacker, right? The linebacker room's chilling right now, but maybe in a year or two when Wagner retires, you might need another linebacker, so maybe you want to draft for the future, something like that. But these positions, it's both things, and sometimes you also have to consider positional value and edge rusher. That's just why I put it number one. But number two, running backs. All these guys are going to be free agents next season, in the next offseason. So regardless, they got to bring in someone else, and this running back class is loaded. You got Trey Hendrickson, stud. Probably will get drafted right around where the Commanders are. You got, Ashton Genty's not going to be there. It's going to be a top 6, top 10 pick. You got Omarion Hampton, also probably going to be a top 15-ish pick. So those guys are out of the equation. But then you got Travion Henderson, like I mentioned. You got his running mate in Ohio State, Quinshon Judkins. I think is a stud as well. His speed very similar to Travion Henderson, at least on the 40-yard dash, time, and they're both very good players. I would be, happy with either one. So those are like the next two guys for me. You got Caleb Johnson, who's solid out of Iowa, and then you got a bunch of other guys that I think are a tier below those guys. Bashal Tootin from Virginia Tech, would love him. Not necessarily, definitely not in the first round or maybe second. But if you either trade back in the late second or early third, I think that would be a possibility for the Commanders. But running back is a position of need for the Commanders, and you're not really going to find it in free agency, especially at this point. And yeah, maybe you go ahead and draft a guy in the first round. If not the first round, I think you can draft one in the second round. For me, there's two different scenarios, right? You either take an edge rusher with that pick that you have, 29. Maybe you trade up a couple spots, whatever. If you really like a guy, why not do it? Or you trade back, let's say 3, 4, 5 spots into that second round, and you take a running back and you accumulate some assets, maybe for next year, maybe for this year. Those are the two scenarios I see happening in the first round. That's what I would do. Obviously, if the board falls a certain way, maybe there's a receiver, the guy from Arizona, McMillan, or maybe you like Ibuka or, Golden or Bond. I don't know. Maybe you really like one of those guys. You didn't think they would fall, and you can take them at, that spot. But for me, it's running back or edge in the first. But again, if someone falls that you really like, offensive lineman, cornerback too is another one. I should have said cornerback as well. But yeah, those are the top two needs. After that, I would say cornerback is a need for sure. More for the future though, because they do have Lattimore, at least for this year, who's going to start. You got Mike Sanders still, who is a stud. You brought back Noah Igbenogany, who's a good depth piece. And then you also brought in Jonathan Jones, who at least for this year should be a solid cornerback. So cornerback is a position need maybe for the future, and it also just depends, because Mike Sanders still, we feel good about him for the future. That's great. Lattimore, we don't know. Let's see what he does this year, because if he plays really well and he's back to that, 2020, he was drafted in 2017, but 2017 to 2021, 2022 Lattimore, then you don't really need a cornerback, because you got Lattimore and Sanders still, and then you got Igbenogany or Jonathan Jones if you want to bring those guys back. I think you're chilling at cornerback. It all really depends on Lattimore. So I honestly probably would put cornerback a little bit lower on this list now, thinking about it a little bit more. But it is a position that is important, and you really don't know with Lattimore how it's going to be. But cornerback is a position of need. And for more for the future, like I said on this list, go ahead and follow my Twitter. But, there are some cornerbacks that they could take in the first round. I think his name is Azariah Thomas, the Florida State guy, is an option. Safety for me is another position of need. You got Will Harris. I like him. Seems like a little bit of a boomer bust guy, but I like the signing for sure. Hard hitting safety. You got him for cheap. You got Quan Martin. And then you got Percy Butler, who I'm not a big fan of at this point. And then you got Jeremy Reeves, who's a good special teams player. And if you really need him to play, you can. I think you need another safety. That's my opinion. You don't need to take one in the first round, but if a guy like Malachi Starks falls, I wouldn't mind that at all. But I think, a safety in the second or, I guess they don't have a third round pick, but who knows at, the time of the draft what happens. But a safety on day 2 or early day 3 is something that the Commanders should look at. I don't love the safety room right now. If Will Harris balls out, then the safety room is going to be good. But even after that, the depth isn't amazing. Like Percy Butler, I know he got a lot of PT last year, but he did not play well. That it is what it is with him. And the last position need for me is wide receiver 3. I like, Terry, Debo, and you got some good pieces in there as well. Noah Brown could be your wide receiver 3, but why not add another guy? So for me, Elijah Moore would be a great signing. He's got that great speed, 4.35, 40-yard dash time, can play kick returner and punt returner. 24 years old, only missed 5 games in 4 years, and has had solid production. Not insane production, but some solid production in the league. Nothing crazy, but he's 24 years old. He can still have a lot unlocked. So let me go ahead and pull it up. But this past year had 538 yards. The year before, 640 yards. And for a wide receiver 3, that's not awful. And then you consider that, all right, he's going to be playing with Jaden Daniels, and he's going to be playing as the wide receiver 3. So he might turn that 540 into a more efficient 540 or more like a 630, 650 with a few touchdowns. So for me, I would not mind Elijah Moore at all as a signing. And if that's not the case, I'm fine with the receiver room how it is currently. Maybe draft a guy, day 3 or whatever if you want, or maybe day 1 if you really want to. But I think the receiver room is pretty solid right now. But yeah, you still want to find that young stud that they do not have right now. Maybe Luke McCaffrey can turn into it, but you got Terry, who's getting up there in age. He's not old, but he's not super young. Debo's not super young either. So if you want to build for the future in your receiver room, like, we got to find a guy that at least we can be like, this guy's going to be good for the next 5-10 years if you can keep him. Maybe Luke McCaffrey's that guy, but he hasn't shown it completely yet. So Luke McCaffrey, maybe you draft a guy, undrafted free agents. Just try to find that guy in the next few years. So when Terry does eventually retire, which hopefully is not even close to now, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 years from now. 20 years from now, then maybe they have a guy that's ready. But yeah, that's it for today's video. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe if you guys are new, and if you stayed till the end of the video, go ahead and comment. Sorry, still a little sick. Go ahead and comment. We'll go, I think I've mentioned him before, but we'll go Greg Stroman, fellow Hokie, and played for the Redskins, maybe the Washington football team for a few years there. But thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace.